Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Project, Problem, and Performance-Based Learning with Jessica Hayes. Jessica has been working with Active Classroom for 4 years as a trainer. She's an English and history teacher and has been doing that for 6 years in Fort Payne, Alabama. And so we're really excited to have her tonight to talk about performance-based learning and using projects and problems to assist learning and using Active Classroom to help that. So I'm really excited to find out some more about this and implementing this style. So Jessica, we are happy to have you tonight, and I do want to mention real quick to everyone that we are recording this, and we also have a chat box on the right hand side. So if you have any questions, I'll make sure that Jessica knows about those so she can continue her presentation. So use the chat box for questions or comments, and we look forward to your feedback. So Jessica, you may begin.
Thank you. Hi, as she said, my name is Jessica Hayes, and I am a certified active classroom trainer. So welcome to my webinar on the different P's of PBL, project, problem, and performance-based learning. So let's go ahead and get started. So I wanted to cover the agenda today, what we're going to be talking but the P can stand for many different types of instruction. So during today's webinar, we will be discussing project-based, problem-based, and performance-based learning. We will be digging into what each are, the benefits and challenges of each, as well as what each look like in the classroom. So first, we're going to look at project-based learning and what exactly it is. So as adults, we are faced with projects to complete every day. Whether it's a job assignment, a home repair, planning a wedding, etc., our lives are filled with various projects. Therefore, proponents of this method believe that schools should reflect real life, so students can be prepared to face these challenges. So, simply put, project-based learning is a teaching method in which students work for an extended period of time towards creating an authentic project that allows students to deepen their knowledge on a topic while also gaining valuable skills that they can apply to future careers, such as critical thinking, researching, collaboration, and presenting. So to design a project-based learning unit, a few components need to be met. First, the project needs to revolve around a problem to solve or a question to answer. The project also involves students asking questions, finding resources, and applying that information. It needs to involve student choice. Students decide what they create and how they work on the project. There's also reflection, with students and teachers both reflecting on the learning process, the quality of work, the effectiveness of the activity, and how they overcome any challenges. There's also critique and revision, which that is gaining feedback from student peers to improve their products, and public product, which that is displaying or presenting the work for the public to view. Like any teaching method, project-based learning comes with benefits and challenges. So project-based learning is a move away from the traditional approach to teaching with less reliance on lecturing and memorization and a movement towards creating real-world tasks. The projects mirror what professionals do every day. However, this also means that teachers may have less time for straightforward content teaching. Students are also more motivated when it comes to learning and engaged in their work when it comes to creating projects. Students are gaining collaboration skills by working together to create their projects, so they are happier when it comes to learning. So happier students, happier teachers, right? However, it can be difficult in managing students when it comes to group work, especially if students do not get along. Project-based learning also provides students with a rigorous learning experience, and according to a collaborative study, implementing this method of learning correlates positively with high student achievement, and this is particularly with schools in high poverty communities. Plus, these projects are standards-based, so students are learning multiple standards through one project. However, a challenge some teachers have voiced is making sure that all of the standards are being met, since one project can take an ample amount of time. Therefore, teachers have to decide the topics to go in depth with versus what should be more lightly discussed. So I teach both history and English, and this was actually a project, an activity I did with my 12th grade British literature class. So it's just an example, and this is a project we did after reading the first Harry Potter novel as a class. So students had to create a project that incorporated the content and the skills that we had learned and discussed as we read the novel. So as we read, we looked at the novel through various literary lenses, and one student chose to analyze the story by creating a crime scene board in which she pinned all the characters to the board and demonstrated all their connections. So she wrote information about the characters and questions surrounding the crime scene. And then she took it a step further because she presented this to all of us when she was finished, and she took it a step further because she explained the religious connections the characters in the event in the story represent. Throughout this unit, we had been examining the story through different literary lenses, and so she decided to analyze the story through a religious lens as well. So for her project, she first centered it around the question of, what Christian imagery is prevalent in Harry Potter. Then she used the information she gained already from the novel and the skills that she learned, which was the work revolving around the different literary lenses that we used. And she further investigated by researching Christian imagery and connections in the story. Then she presented her findings to the class. Finally, she reflected on her work and we discussed her findings. And the results from this project was that as a class, listening to her present this project, when she's doing a project that can relate to what a real life professional does, creating a crime scene, being in a job that involves like a policeman. But she also, as we were listening, we were engaged in what she was saying, and that's going to create a longer retention of the information that we were learning versus just having all my students write an essay. So all the whole students were engaged in this, and she's also learning skills that would transfer to her college and would help her in her career. Next, I want to talk about problem-based learning, and this is a teaching method in which students solve problems in unique ways. A big component of problem-based learning is that students critically think to solve real-world problems. So there are 4 phases to problem-based learning. First, a problem is identified by either the teacher, student, or the whole class. Then students develop a plan to solve the problem. So they are working collaboratively by brainstorming, researching, and building their product or creating their solution. Technology is also a critical component in the researching portion of the process. Students need it to help uncover information to discover solutions to the problem. Then students test out the plan to see if it works. Finally, students evaluate the implementation process by analyzing the results and reflecting on the process. So problem-based works best when students are solving an authentic real-world problem. So it needs to feel real to the students. And the big difference, one of the big differences between project-based and problem-based learning is that with they're not designing a project, students are solving a problem. So some benefits of problem-based learning is that students are gaining a long-term knowledge retention from diving deep into content and information to formulate solutions to real-world problems. Plus, as students are working, they are collaborating with peers, and the discussions that come out of those collaborations reinforce the information that students learn. Students are continuously engaged in the learning process. Through each phase of the instruction, students are an active member from determining the problem to reflecting on the process. Students are also learning skills needed to transfer to their future professions. Learning how to solve problems in a controlled environment such as a school helps build critical thinking skills, teamwork, researching, decision-making, and other skills needed for success after school. So honing these skills at an early age can only help sharpen them later. The drawbacks of problem-based learning is that there is a potential for poor performance on standardized testing. Because students are spending an ample amount of time problem solving, they may not be as prepared for state testing as teachers and institutions would like students to be. Another challenge could be unpreparedness on the part of the student and teacher. Students may be emotionally unprepared, they may be immature to handle the problem solving process, or they may lack the background knowledge needed to complete the process, or they may be unfamiliar with the questions that are presented or that may arise as they attempt to solve a problem. Teachers, they may have to adjust their teaching styles by letting students take more control of the learning process. So they may need professional development to learn this new method of teaching to effectively apply it to the classroom. And finally, it can be time-consuming for teachers to assess the quality of the problem-solving process. Teachers have so many things vying for their attention that this process can be time-consuming, especially when it comes to assessing the input of students to their respective roles in the process. History's Mysteries, this is a series in Active Classroom, and this is a more heavily guided problem-solving activity. So students are presented with a crime to solve, which is the problem. They act as criminalists, students do, and they're responsible for gathering, analyzing, and interpreting forensic evidence to solve the mystery that they are presented with. Then they are given the steps to solve the problem. So instead of them coming up with a plan, they're following a plan that's already created for them. So after they go through the steps of reviewing crime scene photos, reviewing a coroner's and medical examiner's report, and reviewing the detective's research, they take the information they gather to create a forensic analysis. Finally, after all students are finished with their forensic analysis reports, they will be given a press release detailing what actually happened. The class will then debrief the process and evaluate how well they solved the crime. So what you're looking at here is my students actually did the Kristallnacht activity through History's Mysteries. So they acted as a criminalist. They had to go through these steps, and what they're looking at right now is the crime scene photos. And so they have to go through the different steps to solving the crime. So as a result of this process, they learned content, skills, and they were engaged in a real-life task while solving a problem. They were actively engaged in their learning and was able to behave like a criminalist, which is a real-life job that a student may want to pursue one day. Performance-based learning is a method in which students take the knowledge and skills they have learned and apply them to a culminating activity that demonstrates evidence of learning. The culminating activity that students create are authentic and show that they are actively involved in the learning process. The teacher gets to decide what to teach, and they do not have to give up units of study or their favorite activities. Teachers can use what already works best for them. Students just demonstrate their learning through a performance activity. So students are learning content knowledge following the state standards, as well as learning higher order thinking skills and work habits necessary for the real world. The performance task builds upon the previously learned content, higher order thinking skills, and work habits, and is strategically placed within the unit for students to be able to pull it all together. So performance activities can include portfolios, role-playing, presentations, exhibits and fairs, and debates. So the benefits of performance-based learning is that students are building on the knowledge and skills and are provided with an assessment list or rubric, which helps them monitor their learning and encourages them to pay close attention to their quality of work. So for the teacher, it enables them to provide students with feedback on their strengths and weaknesses of their work. It also allows the teacher to adequately and consistently evaluate and grade student work. Another benefit is that a performance activity can be just that, a performance. Having students role play can be engaging and fun for them. So through dramatic work, students can form clear learning objectives, like what should they gain from this performance. They can become comfortable with public speaking, and they could fully analyze a particular character, event, or situation. As a teacher, depending on how you teach, you may not have to deviate much from your current methods of instruction. You can take your favorite activities and use it to communicate knowledge, skills, and habits for your students to gain. Drawbacks can initially be the time involved in planning and executing the performance task. Like with any new method, it will take time for teachers to develop the activities needed for students to demonstrate mastery of a standard. Another problem can be that even though students are being creative, they can unfortunately be using that creativity to cheat, copy another student's work, or rely on other students in their group to pick up their slack. Resources can also be an issue in that, does the teacher classroom have all the items necessary to complete a performance task throughout the school year? This is one activity, or my students working on one activity that they did in an 8th grade ancient civilization class when they were studying ancient Egypt. They actually performed a mock press conference, and it was featuring different pharaohs of that time. So during the press conference, the pharaohs were addressing these allegations, made up allegations that the ancient Egyptian government had too much power. So each pharaoh had to explain the accomplishments of their reign and give a good argument as to why they had the citizens' best interests at heart. So this activity combined what they were learning about the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, as well as skills such as research, analyzing, questioning, public speaking, and teamwork, which was just to name a few. They had to work in groups to prepare for the press conference, and each student had a different role to play for that day. On press conference day, 4 students represented the 4 different pharaohs, and each pharaoh had a legal counsel with them to help them answer questions. And then the other students had to ask questions to the different pharaohs. But after the press conference was over, students reflected on the press conference to decide if they believed that an all-powerful rule of the pharaohs was the best form of government for Egypt at that time. So as students are performing their individual roles, they are participating in real-life tasks of a press conference and being an interviewer. Actually taking on a role is much more effective for students to understand what goes into these real-life positions than simply just reading about them. They are going in-depth into a topic while learning content and gaining valuable skills. So even though there are some differences to these methods, they all offer active learning on the part of the student. Students are participating in authentic, real-world tasks in each method. Students are not only learning content, but higher order thinking skills that will transfer over to college and work. Time can definitely be an issue in implementing any of these methods, especially in the beginning when teachers are first building their lessons and students are deciding how to go forth with their learning. However, like with any other method, it will get easy and less time-consuming with each passing school year. Does anybody have any questions? All right. With this, if you have any additional information about PBL, here is the information for Pam's email address. I have one question. Is it possible to have these slides emailed at the end of the session? I would gladly email them to you if you could leave your email for me. So yes, if you would like for me to send this to you, I will gladly email this out after the presentation is over.
That was excellent, Jessica.
Thank you.
I see several people requesting the slides, so that is really wonderful, and I don't blame them. It's so nice to have an idea of ways to implement it into the classroom and to see how you have done it so well in your classroom. I love History's Mysteries. The Black Death was one that we recently did, which is always engaging for students. What's one of your favorites?
History's Mysteries is definitely the top. They're so engaged with it, and students love it. And then it causes them to want to learn more about the topic that they're investigating. So exactly. They're really engaged in it.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. It's so fun to see how they talk about their learning and the different things that they are investigating. So to see them talk about as if they're really there, mm-hmm. and as if that is their time period. So which is a hard thing to do in teaching, to get them to view it from that person's perspective at that time, forgetting all the other things they know.
Right.
So I love it. Well, great. Well, we'll write down these emails, and Jessica will get those to you. Once again, Jessica, thank you so much. This was a great presentation, and thank you everyone that was able to participate. We have recorded it, and it should be on the Social Studies Services website soon. So we appreciate everyone again tonight. If there are any questions, go ahead and put them in. But I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And once again, thank everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you all.